Welcome. This is the Swim Coach Dad podcast, and I'm Victor Swim Club coach Scott Wisner. You know, the idea of a full athletic scholarship is sometimes a goal of swimmers and their parents, for obvious reasons, but it's very rarely awarded, especially these days. I can't think of the last time anybody I know was awarded a full athletic scholarship for swimming. How to approach the changing landscape of college swimming and how to get the most bang out of your swimming requires work and an open mind. Well, okay, there's a lot more to it than that. And we're going to be talking about that. Today I'm going to talk about some of the basics about college scholarships and swimming in college. Okay, first things first. I tend to get into more detail and the key points get lost in the end, so I'm just going to start out with some rules and terms of college selections and some advice. First of all, remember, the purpose of going to college is to get an education. Doing well academically and getting a college education that leads to a career in something you're passionate about is your priority in college. It's too expensive to use for any other purpose. If your goal is to be a physician, then your goal is still going to lead to a job. But first you have to work toward getting the grades and MCAT scores high enough to get into medical school. But your undergraduate education is the start of that process, and doing well in it is key to moving up to the next step. I had a swimmer once who told me she was planning on majoring in education, and yet one of the colleges she was looking at that she loved, and she very much liked the college swimming team there, but the college didn't have her intended major. I asked her why she would look at a college that much that didn't have her major, and all she said was, "I love the campus." Look, at colleges you have your major, or at least to major in areas of study you believe you are interested in. Somehow, you need to limit your search to schools that are relevant to your academic goals. All right, the other piece of information, or another piece, is start early. Beginning of your sophomore year in high school is not too early. Start looking at what majors are offered at colleges, where you might want to be geographically. Think about large school, medium school, small school, whether the school's in a city, suburb, rural setting, and really what kind of swimming you want. I mean, do you want it to be really high-powered and high pressure? Well, you're going to have to work towards that too. Most say they don't have any idea of what they want to study. Mostly the guys. So find out what you're interested in studying. Check out Indeed, Monster, and other employment sites, and just explore what jobs are out there that could be interesting to you and what kind of education it takes to do that job. Also look into articles about jobs that will be important in the future. You have to make it almost like a homework assignment. Well, not quite that unpopular, but, something that has a goal that's meaningful to you, so leading to college. The more you know what you're interested in studying for college, the easier the process will be. My son wanted to study engineering from the time he was young, and so when it came to looking at colleges, he could eliminate those schools that didn't have engineering as a major offered, even if he did love the school. On the other hand, my daughter didn't really have any specific major in mind, so she had a lot more to consider in choosing a college. And believe me, it's a lot messier when you don't know anything about what you want to do. Also, and this is important to know, some colleges, most of these are in Division I's, don't allow swimmers or divers to major in certain more intense majors like engineering, pre-med, physician's assistant, physical therapy, and other majors that require more credits per semester or other additional work. Like if you want to be an engineering major, count on 18 credits per semester required at most schools. If you go to someplace like WPI that has a different system, it'll work out differently. But for the most part, you're looking at a lot more work with those majors. While I don't agree with this policy that a lot of these colleges have, unfortunately, it's a reality. There aren't many, but it's something to keep in mind. All right, you need to put your profile on collegeswimming.com. At least it will put your name out there so college coaches can look you up when you get in touch with them. Also, it's important to love the college you choose without swimming. Yes, if you plan to swim, the swimming part is important because we found if someone is miserable with swimming there, the academic performance is usually negatively affected as well. But look at the school without swimming as a part of this so that if something changes and you decide not to swim, you're still at the right academic college. Another swimmer I coach applied early decision to Johns Hopkins, which is binding, meaning if she was to get in, she had to go there, unless there were some pretty specific reasons she couldn't go. The problem was she never visited the school or had even seen the school. She didn't get in and ended up going to RPI, which is very different from Johns Hopkins in a lot of ways. But she did really well there. And as an added bonus, she was able to swim all 4 years at RPI, whereas if she had gone to Johns Hopkins, she couldn't have done that at all. She couldn't have made the team. Do as well as you possibly can in school, in high school. Take high school classes in your grades very seriously. Find a tutor for SATs and ACTs, and unless you get 1,600 on the ACTs or the SATs and 36 on the ACTs, take those tests multiple times, since much of the academic aid in college is determined by those scores. In fact, the Miami University of Ohio puts right on their website how much academic money is awarded for which scores on the standardized test. Also be aware there are more and more colleges who are test optional, where they don't require SATs or ACTs. However, they still have to figure out what students will do well there and who should be admitted. So there are other majors they use to decide who's admitted, like personal interviews or extensive essays. All right, a friend of mine who was the women's rowing coach at Williams College and Syracuse University always said that student athletes can do 4 things in college: academics, which is a priority and the reason for you to be there; athletics, which is a commitment you make to the team, so that has to be honored as well. Then you can have a social life and you can do extracurricular activities and clubs. But for the overwhelming majority of students, doing 2 of those well is about all you have time for. So that means academics and your sport. If you swim on a college team, that has to serve as your social life, and as most colleges do some kind of community service projects, that will have to serve as your extracurricular outlet. And frankly, it isn't like you'll have a lot more time than that to do academics and swimming beyond, your obligations to those. This leads me to the point that swimming in college and being a very good student is likely to be the hardest thing you will have done up to that point in your life. It is usually far, far more demanding than high school academics and swimming, no matter where you went. Also, college swimming is a non-revenue sport, so the win-loss record and winning conference and national championships is not the top of the priority for most athletic directors and college presidents when judging the success of their swimming and diving programs, or any other non-revenue sport for that matter. The 2 main measures for non-revenue sports is team grade point average and the graduation success rate, which is the percentage of student athletes who graduate within 6 years of entering college. The real challenge is doing extremely well in academics and doing very well in swimming at the same time. Your obligation to the team is not only to swim as well as possible, but also to contribute to the success of the team academically. A 3.0 or a B team GPA is about the minimum, and there will always be some idiots who spend more time playing video games and partying who get 2.0 GPAs or worse, so the rest of the team has to make up for those failings. Also, college recruiting has changed over the years with more limitations and more rules for recruiting, especially this year. And the terms of recruiting have been split basically into those at the very top of the sport in terms of colleges and recruits, and the rest of the colleges and athletes. So what happens to someone that's a top 50 recruit going to a top 25 or 50 college is going to be a totally different experience than what, most of the athletes and the colleges will offer an experience. At the same time, the number of colleges with money for athletic scholarships has decreased in swimming, while the number of swimmers in college swimming has increased, especially on the women's side. One of my best friends in high school was the number 2 high school recruit in the country his senior year, which was in the late 70s. He was being courted by some of the best teams in the country at the time: Texas, Indiana, Florida, and a bunch of others. He was being constantly contacted by colleges week after week. In those days, you couldn't officially sign nationals letters of intent, which is the commitment student athletes give, saying they'll attend to a college and the commitment of the college agreeing to support the swimmer financially, until April 15th of the student athlete's senior year. Now it's much earlier than that. The offers rolled in, and it came down to not only getting a full athletic scholarship, but because of his personal situation, he had to be guaranteed a full scholarship for all 4 years of his eligibility. And when you're the number 2 recruit in the country, you can demand that, or at least then you could. It might be hard to imagine, but it was a very, very stressful situation then, and he ended up hiding out at various friends' houses to get away from the ringing phone and the pressure of making this important decision. The process has changed a lot, and now there are rules about how often and when colleges can contact recruits, but the process is no less stressful for the student athletes in their college searches. I I remember I've gotten several texts from parents or friends of mine who are coaches saying that they have a student athlete who's really, struggling with the decision on where to go to college, and it's almost all consuming. The fall of senior years is usually a really stressful time, anyways, but it's really stressful for the student athletes because they're trying to make what they consider to be the most important decision in their life, and in a lot of ways it is. Division I sports programs are largely funded through football, basketball, and other revenue sports, which are those sports that spend less than they take in, with football being the overwhelming revenue winner when team is successful and fans support it, and the biggest drain of money when the team is not successful. There are around 357 colleges currently competing in Division I. Of those, 254 colleges have Division I football programs, and of those, 70 actually make more in revenue in football than they spend in most years. This year is going to be different, obviously. So that means of the 254 colleges, only 70 make it. So 184 colleges don't make money on football. That means there's nothing extra to spend on other sports. They spend more than they take in. Of the remaining 103 Division I colleges without football programs draining their finances, 34 have no football and a men's swimming program, and 48 have no football and a women's swimming program. Those are the ones we tend to favor. Those are the ones we look towards because those are going to be the more stable, programs and colleges going forward. Those are colleges like George Mason, Xavier, UMBC, Binghamton, George Washington, IUPUI in Indianapolis, Cleveland State, American, Boston University, among others. And these are going to be the ones that are going to be around. And you can't go wrong with those schools. Those are very good colleges to go to if you want to go Division I. I remember the day very clearly. April 3rd, 2017. I received a text from one of our swimmers who was at Buffalo, the university at Buffalo, just saying, "I'm so sorry." That was all. That was the extent of it. And I thought it was odd. So I asked her what it meant. And she sent me the link to an article saying that Buffalo had just dropped their men's swimming program as of the following year, which would have been my son's freshman year. While we hate, and I do mean hate, losing college swimming programs, this one hit home literally quite harder. In October of the previous year, my son had committed to attend the University of Buffalo, and he had signed his letter of intent in November. Since then, he had started the bonding process with his future teammates, and then in 1 minute, all of our plans had been thrown into a tailspin. We had looked at probably 25 colleges in the process to find the one college that had the combination of academics and swimming that fit him well and that we could afford. It had not been an easy process or decision, and all that had been undone, just in the blink of an eye. The next 3 weeks were spent between him mourning the loss of his team, because he felt that he was part of it then, and these were his teammates, and finding another place for him to go to college, or at least deciding what to do about college, between going to Buffalo and not swimming, taking the year off and going to another college, or trying to find a college for the following year in a hurry. Coach Mike and I had made our contacts, and we had legitimate opportunities for him at 10 or 12 colleges. And it ended up well. He's getting a very good education. But there were times before his first, around the first time he decided, and then the second time deciding when it was really stressful for all of us and didn't know what to do. We didn't know what direction to turn. So it can be said that having options is important when it comes to selecting colleges. The first thing Mike and I went to was back to the schools that Kai had talked to and that he had been considering. It also helps to have excellent grades and scores in these situations. Okay, to put some of this in perspective, here are some statistics to show the opportunities. In the 1981-82 college swimming season, there were a total of 348 colleges with women's swimming and diving teams and about 6,200 swimmers and divers participating across all three divisions. As of the 2017-18 season, there are 555 colleges with women's swim teams, and the number of swimmers and divers more than doubled to nearly 13,000. Okay, so there are another couple hundred, a little over 200 colleges to choose from, but there were 2 times as many swimmers involved. In the 1981-82 season, there were 161 teams in Division I, level where there are most scholarships allowed. In 2017-18, this went up to 195 teams. So they gained, roughly 34 teams in that period of time. But since then, it's gone down to about 188 teams because there are some that have recently dropped their programs. In Division II, which also allows athletic scholarships, but fewer of them, they went from 57 teams to 104 between 1981 and 2017. But in Division III, the level where no athletic scholarships are allowed, this went from 130 schools to 256 schools, nearly doubling. More importantly, the average size went from 17.9 swimmers and divers per team in 1981 to 23.1 swimmers per team, which may not be all that meaningful, except that most conferences have a limit of around 18 swimmers and divers, with divers counting as a third of a swimmer. That's for their conference meet, and some have travel limitations as far as how many swimmers and divers can travel to dual meets and in-season invitationals. During that same period, between 1981 and 2017, women's Division I team size went from an average of 18.9 swimmers and divers to 29.6, which means that something around 10 athletes wouldn't get to swim in their conference meet and likely sparingly at dual meets. So while there are more teams to swim on in Division I for women, there's more competition for places on those teams. And at the same time, the number of scholarships allowed in Division I for women swimming and diving has stayed at 14, so swimmers and divers are on average getting less money, and in fact, full scholarships are very rare. For the men, the situation has changed even more profoundly. In 1981-82, there were a total in all of college swimming of 377 colleges with swimming and diving teams, and about 7,700 swimmers and divers, averaging something around 20.5 per team. In 2017-18, there were 439, so 62 more teams at that time, and about 9,700 swimmers and divers for an average of 22.1 swimmers and divers per team. So not a huge increase, not that same kind of increase that the women had in that same period. But the men have dramatically changed as in each division. In 1981, there were 182 Division I swimming and diving programs, and Division I participation has gone down from 4,600 to about 3,700 from 1981 to 2017. That number of programs has further declined so that we're around 128 or less now. Some have dropped since 2017, especially in the last 6 months. So there are fewer Division I teams, but also Division I teams are swimming and diving are limited to 9.9 scholarships as it is. So there's fewer than there are for women, but more and more are being funded with less scholarships than that. I mean, getting a scholarship, I think that University of Massachusetts, UMass Amherst is living with like 2 full scholarships for the men that they can divide up. Really not that much. So while the times have improved significantly in the water, the number of swimmers participating in Division I on the men's side has decreased, and the competition for the money out there has increased. During the same time, Division II has gone from 57 teams and 1,100 swimmers and divers to 75 teams, so another 18, and 1,500 swimmers and divers, and yet still staying around 20 swimmers and divers per team. Around us, Lemoyne is really the closest Division II college with swimming, so you can use that as your gauge on that. The biggest challenge for men is that Division III has gone from 139 teams to about 2,500 athletes to 231 teams. So, nearly 100 more, and about 4,400 athletes, accounting for all the gain in men's college swimming since 1981. So swimming at the Division III level on both sides has improved significantly and has become more and more competitive. While the top teams in Division I are state universities like Texas, Cal, Georgia, North Carolina State, Missouri, Indiana, with Stanford and Harvard kind of being the outliers as private universities among the top teams, the top teams in Division III tend to be selective private colleges like Denison, Kenyon, Emory, Johns Hopkins, Washington University, Williams, MIT, Chicago, Amherst, Tufts. So the bottom line for men is that there are fewer opportunities to swim and to get scholarships in Division I and more opportunities in Division III. There is still the idea, especially from parents, that getting a Division I swimming scholarship is the most important part of the college selection process, and compromising by going to a Division III school is unacceptable. We found that the academic scholarships at Division III schools has increased, and the potential to make those packages work in Division III is possible. For most of our swimmers, being recruited is up to them. By the end of their sophomore year in high school, they should have a list of 15 at least up to 25 colleges they want to explore. Fill out the recruiting form on each of the college websites and follow that up with an email to either the head coach or the assistant coach who's likely to be in charge of recruiting. Most head coaches don't lead the recruiting effort, so you can kind of it might be somebody that's called an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator or something like that. Plan visits to colleges during spring break and summer break before their junior years. That summer is really key for going to see colleges. Contact the coaches to let them know you'll be there. In Division I, they won't be able to meet with you until June 15th at the end of the sophomore year. With the pandemic, all this has changed for now, so visiting campuses is very limited and contact with coaches has been pretty much stopped. But somehow you need to get a feel for the colleges. We went to visit George Washington not that long ago when my daughter was trying to make her decision, and it was a ghost town. It was in the middle of Washington, D.C., and there was hardly anybody around. We saw a couple of students and talked to them, but pretty much the college had, they only had a few hundred people on campus out of the 12,000 that go there. So it was really a totally different situation, and you can't really get a feel for the college that way either. So find out as much as you can about the academics and the character of the swim program as best you can. You'll also need to find out if the team has a number limit. Mostly the men's programs in Division I have a limit on how many swimmers they can have on their teams. At one point, Ohio State, I think, had like 45 swimmers and divers on their men's team, and that's been pushed down to 36. And there are other colleges that have had that same situation, so make sure you're going to have a spot. Others like Binghamton, Delaware, and then the mid-tier Division I also have their limits, so check that out. We had a swimmer recently run up against those limits, and it forced him to scramble to find another college suitable for him academically, athletically, and financially. Ask a lot of questions when you're talking to the college coaches. You want to know their training philosophy and maybe about their weekly yardage. One of the struggles we've had with some of the colleges, we've had swimmers that doing far less in terms of yardage, and as a result, they've done really far worse in terms of times. How they taper is also something you want to hear about. You'll also need to know how they arrange training groups, what kind of weight training program they have, since we've had some problems with our distance swimmers, especially doing too much lifting and putting too much bulk weight. Maybe you feel you need to do more lifting in dry land. For one of our swimmers, doing a lot of lifting has helped her quite a bit, getting her times down. At the very least, swimmers need to talk when talking to college coaches. There's nothing more frustrating for coaches than to make a call to a swimmer and that he or she is recruiting and have the swimmer not say much or give one-word answers. If you aren't comfortable talking to adults, learn to do so by talking to your parents or other adults around. Because when it comes down to it, if you don't talk, they won't get to know you, and you won't be able to single yourself out, as someone that they want. Every year, Coach Mike and the coaching staff helps our swimmers venture into the world of college swimming through the recruiting process. We use our contacts and connections with the college swimming coaches that we've cultivated over the years to help this process. We also do analysis of the conferences and teams for swimmers who ask for it and see how they fit into the conference. For the most part, we look for colleges where the swimmer can make finals in at least 2 events in their conference meet, or at least have some hope to make those finals. We like our swimmers to have a role on the team so they're not struggling to make the conference teams, but we also know that the academic goals are a big part of the process, and those needs must be met. This is a tricky balance between finding the right academic fit and the right swimming fit and the right financial fit at a school the student athlete likes or even loves. Sometimes you have to decide what's most important to you. When it was time for a daughter of the high school friend I mentioned earlier to decide on college, she was still thinking in his terms from the 70s when he was recruited. His daughter was given an offer that was very good by all standards, but in terms that he wouldn't accept. When he was looking at the colleges, he was offered full athletic scholarships. Those times are gone. His daughter was offered about a 75% 75% scholarship in academic scholarships and athletic scholarships combined, but they had taken the total amount they needed to give her, and they found out the academic money she could get, and then they added to that the amount they could afford to give from the athletic side to get to the 75%. The athletic scholarship only amounted to like $12,000 because she was an excellent student with very strong test scores, and her father was incensed that they didn't value her enough as an athlete to give her more money. It took a while to talk some sense into him and allow her to accept the offer. You have to put your ego aside in this process. Telling someone you are a Division I swimmer shouldn't be a reason to pick a school. The reality is now student athletes are in the partial scholarship sports like swimming are given packages, which include need-based aid first, then academic scholarships, and finally athletic scholarships to make the full amount being offered. Some colleges offer in-state tuition waivers, which is a way to offer scholarship that drops the out-of-state tuition down to in-state amount. Also, very good students who might not be up to the level needed on the team as far as performance goes might be given a little money, as little as $1,000, because in Division I, anyone on an athletic scholarship of any amount has their grades counted in the reports of the team academic success to the NCAA. Of course, the colleges and the coaches in the colleges want to have this number be as strong as possible, so giving a small amount of money to strong academic students helps with that. Bottom line is, be a great student. There's a lot more to this, but hopefully I've given you all something to think about. Remember that we're here to help, and that Coach Mike and I want to help our swimmers with their college search. But we need to be involved early, and the swimmers need to be willing to do the heavy lifting in the search. Remember, no matter what you think, your parents aren't going to go to college, so the swimmers need to be responsible for communicating with the colleges and the coaches. You swimmers need to take the lead in the process. Thank you for listening in again. Make sure you listen next time when we'll be talking about something that doesn't seem to be relevant now, but hopefully will be sometime soon. How many meets is too many? Until then, this is Victor Swim Club coach Scott Wisner reminding you to get out there and keep swimming.